welcome to the Presidential Debate Series. I'm your host, Amy Treat. Today we have two candidates, one independent and another from the Green Party. Joining us from the Green Party is Ayape Sudaman Kanamo Christian Moyowasifza-Curry. She has a 35-year track record in program and project management, in which she was called on to develop, produce, manage, and evaluate principles and techniques in community, public and media affairs, and relations. She has worked for clients in business, promotions, and investment and educational, social, environmental, political, economic, cultural exchange, and heritage-based programs and projects on every level. And also joining us is independent candidate, Dr. Lynn S. Kahn. She earned a PhD in clinical psychology from the American University and worked as an organizational psychologist inside federal agencies for 32 years, including 6.5 years on the White House Partnership to Reinvent Government. Dr. Kahn has worked on transformational efforts such as improved customer service at the Internal Revenue Service, developing interagency support for 21st century jobs, and providing expert strategic planning consultation for aerospace modernization, juvenile justice reform, probation reform, and reducing homelessness. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sudanam, let's start with you.
All right.
What would be your first policy priority upon taking office?
Amy, thank you all for having me. My priority would be children focus. Within our Green Party platform, we talk about future focus. I would realign our administration and our nation to make children the top priority. The majority of our budget would go toward empowering, enlightening, and strengthening our nation's children. So in fact, we are the most highly educated, most spiritually conscious, and the most proactive nation on the planet through our children.
Do you have something would you like to expand on that? Or?
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
That works for me. I'll add to it when I get into my questions and answers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Kahn, are there any federal agencies that you would eliminate completely?
Well, let me start by saying, first of all, thank you for inviting us. It's lovely to be here with my friend, Sudanam Kanamo. It's important to understand that every single one of our federal agencies is broken, disconnected from what it is we, the people, want, going down a completely conflicted or confused path. So every single one of them needs to be dramatically transformed. Every one of them. For example, the U.S. Department of Justice, the mission statement is organized around 3 words: control, enforcement, and punishment. That's not going to solve any of the problems that we're facing today related to our broken criminal justice system. Every agency needs to be transformed dramatically. In terms of, are there any that I would eliminate completely? There are certainly several that I have serious questions about. So, for example, the U.S. Department of Education has failed this nation for decades. My estimate is that of a $70 billion budget, $30 billion goes to programs that have absolutely no results. So I would dramatically cut back on programs in education that have no results. The same is true in housing and urban development, another one of our really incompetent, negligent, corrupt federal departments. The same thing is true of the Department of Labor, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Agriculture. So once you start cutting out waste and stop funding programs that have absolutely no results, then you're shrinking the bureaucracy, but you're getting the agency to focus, for example, on issues that Sudanam raised, like focusing on our children and the commitments that we've made for our children and finding resources to fund those programs that actually work.
Well, what would you put in place of the Department of Education?
Well, I'm not saying have no education policy. I'm saying eliminate programs that have no results, and then take the money that we send out to the states anyway. I mean, it's the 21st century. Use technology. Push a button, send the money out. Why do we have a bureaucracy? And then use the money to send it back to the states to close the education funding gap, the difference between the resources we give to that schools in wealthier communities get versus schools in lower income and poor communities get. So close the funding gap. start a trajectory for free public education from early childhood education through public college and all the way through. And just start and do something about the resources. I drove 14,000 miles around the country in 100 days last year, and I talked to teachers everywhere. The number one problem they talked about, hunger in the classrooms.
Yes.
And number two, the lack of resources. I talked to teachers who said they have one science book for 300 kids. The science book is in the library. You get to check it out for 15 minutes. So we do not understand how poorly resourced the vast majority of our schools and classrooms are. And so take the waste out of the bureaucracy and redirect it to serve children and serve our communities better.
Suriname, how do you feel about what she's saying?
I'd have to say I would eliminate the Defense Department and entitle it the Department of Peace. Our priorities are dysfunctional. Since 1945, our species, because there's one race, it's called human, has been able to annihilate ourselves. So for me, I'm a green, so climate change is critical. So I would eliminate the Department of Defense. It would be called the Department of Peace. Also, I would eliminate the Department of Education and call it the Department of Children and Youth, because they must be our priority. By all means, the programs that Dr. Kahn spoke about must be included, but our system, our federal system is dysfunctional. It got us in this mess. So restructuring government, where it's one, critical to help ensure that our species survive. We can't do that on a war footing. We must do that on a peace footing, and we must do it on a child-focused footing. So for me, within 100 days, I would eliminate those. Not that we don't need to protect ourselves, but what we've done is create crazy in the world. Every person and individual that's about hurting and harming Americans, we created them by our federal funding through the Department of Defense, by not funding education. So I would eliminate those two and restructure. On top of that, we have future focus. That's one of our 10 key values, is coming out with America at 300, a survey that would ask every citizen of America, since we're going to be 300 in less than 60 years, what it is you think, feel, and want as a quality as a nation. From the beginning of our nation, folks of color, immigrants, and the wideness of our spirituality was not included. It was Anglo-Saxon. And we all know by the end of this decade, it would be a brown one. So we must reshift and change the paradigm for our entire nation. I agree with Dr. Kahn about those things, but I want to eliminate those agencies and make them much smaller under a bigger peace and child focus.
Very good. Do you have something that you want to add?
Of course.
Oh, yes.
Please.
So my platform
Yes.
is transform government and build peace.
Okay.
Fix our broken government agency by agency, dramatically reducing the size of many of them, and refocusing, reinventing, and transforming the purpose. The second part of my platform is build peace, here at home and around the world. I've written 3 books, 2 books about government reform. My first book was called Peacemaking. That was in 1988. It was published in 1988. So peace building and the psychology of peacemaking, which is kind of more about the heart and how you see the world, how you relate to people, along with activities of peace building, such as bringing people together to solve shared problems. It's a major part of my platform. I have thought through exactly what are the appropriate White House policies related to building peace here at home, which has a lot to do with the lead agency that should be responsible for building peace at home, the U.S. Department of Justice, which is horribly broken, and how to transform justice so that we do the kind of reform work in criminal justice systems that we know can be done. There's some great examples out there. And the same is true, what are the policies that make sense when you're talking about building peace around the world? I think it's a brilliant point that Sudana made about our policies have created war and violence. We're just contributing to this cycle of violence and conflict and disaffected people and the horrible circumstances out there. I think that we need to rethink what is the role of the United States in the world around us. I talk about a new doctrine of war and peace building for the 21st century, and it includes 5 points, if I may. The first is the purpose of our military and the Department of Defense is to protect the homeland. The purpose of the State Department is to build peace around the world. The second point is that we have to be strong to build peace. I don't think that we can build peace from a position of weakness. Third point is building peace doesn't mean being stupid. There are some serious people out there who want to do us harm, whether we contributed to it or not. If there are people who want to do us harm, I think we have to be smart to build peace. The fourth is really making wiser foreign policy decisions. Our foreign policy decisions, as Sudanam said, have been horrible. We invaded Iraq in 2003, and 8 weeks later we fired 85,000 teachers, doctors, engineers. Then we fired 700,000 military people, including the leadership. So we sent home almost 1 million people that hated us within 24 hours. 700,000 we sent home with weapons, humiliated. I mean, what do we expect? The leaders of ISIS are some of those same military leaders that we fired and sent home. We have made horrible foreign policy decisions.
Very bad.
And the fifth kind of relates to what Sudanam said. My fifth point is tilt Washington, D.C. towards peace building. We spend 14 times as much making war as we do building peace. It's time to correct that imbalance. And I think that I truly believe only an independent or third-party candidate can bring people and politicians together to start moving forward in a way that seeks common ground and solves our national problems. I believe the election of 2016 is a referendum on an era of peace building. And I think that's what we stand for as women and as independent candidates. And
Sudanam, you want to?
I'll go a step further. I am in total agreement with Dr. Kahn. Our economic system, this capitalism, is barbaric. And it has created, I shouldn't say, it's created it because it's American businesses that have gone abroad to hurt and harm folks, paying them less money and then we buy these cheap products and bring them back. Americans should be mad at American corporations. We need to dismantle capitalism. I'm at that level. Clearly, I'm a socialist. I'm very open and honest about it because capitalism has created the dysfunction. How can we in America have homelessness, children uneducated, veterans not cared for? I mean, should I keep going on? It's dysfunctional. So this economic system has robbed us of being great. So for me, it's about changing the paradigm, not only through our military, through our children, but through our economic model. In the Green Party, we push the green path. I go further and say every community must own the key essentials: earth, water, power, health care. I'm a single payer sister. Nobody should ever have to choose between their mortgage to pay for medicine, to choose between paying for their children to eat and buying pills. That's a sick society. We cannot keep harming ourselves. We have more domestic terrorists than we have foreign, and that's because people are ignorant about that thing I talked about being human. Human first. We have to save our species. But I know you had other questions, but thankful. Thank you, Dr. Kahn, for your 5-point plan. It's awesome.
Okay.
Can I add something?
You want to say something? Go ahead, please.
So I think it's really important, the points that Sudanam are bringing up. And it's a system. Governance is a living system.
Yes.
It's all connected.
Yes.
So our foreign policy is connected to our economic policy. It's connected to the failures of our education system, the failures of our healthcare system, the failures of affordable housing, the failure of our transportation system. It is all connected. Yes. So we can't just talk about, what are we going to do? Tweaking the Department of Education. It's not about tweaking a particular agency. It's about looking at all of governance, transform government and build peace all together and moving forward on every front. And it's so important to understand that it's a system.
Yes.
It's a living system.
Well, it's all connected.
And it's all connected. So you have to look at all the different pieces as Sudanam was talking about.
Very good points.
Thank you.
All right. Pseudonym. Under current law, states can restrict abortion after the point of the fetus's viability. Do you think these restrictions should be lifted?
Yes.
And would you want to expound on that for me? Or?
It's a woman's right to choose. This is your body. This is our bodies. No one has a right to dictate anything about a woman's body. That's patriarchy, and I am against patriarchy. We have to claim our survival as women. We are the ones, we are the wombs of this world and this nation, and no one has a right to tell you anything about your body.
Now, what
Do
are
you think I'd let anybody? You think I'd let anybody tell me what to do with my body? Please.
No.
So I just want to add one piece to this, and that is when you force a political candidate to take a position, it then gets harder to look deeper. I'm a psychologist. I want let's look
Very
deeper.
good.
What, am I pro-choice, pro-life? I'm pro-solve the problem.
Yes.
What can we do to solve the problem? What is it that we understand when a girl sometimes or a woman seeks an abortion?
Teach.
It's not. I've drove 14,000 miles in one 100-day trip. I talked to a lot of young people and a lot of parents. It's not even it's not getting sex education in school, not understanding you can have sex and get pregnant the first time. So
Yes.
some of it is a lack of education. Some of it is a lack of access to birth control. There's a
Yes.
study that's going on in Colorado, and I think they've reduced teenage
pregnancy.
pregnancy by like 42% by providing free birth control.
Yes.
So that's part of it, access to birth control. I talked to young people who said they had to go to another state to get birth control, like 100 miles away
That's
to get birth
crazy.
control.
It seems like they're trying to deny access to some birth controls at time. I mean,
And
then
and not
they
even
don't
not
wanna
abortion, it's
deny,
just birth control. And I think it has to do with feeling uncomfortable with your
body.
sexuality.
Yeah.
And I think another part is kind of goes back to what Sunan was saying about the economic dysfunction in this country. There's research. There are women who are choosing to have abortions because they can't afford to
Yes.
live in this economy and have a child or another child.
Right.
So we need to, and it really goes back to what Sunan said about do children come first or not? What priorities do we need to fund so that women who are having a child understand and feel confident that our communities will support them?
Yes.
But aren't some of the insurance companies trying to deny access to birth control? That's what sort of upsets me.
So now we go into dysfunctional healthcare systems.
Yeah.
And, we
Yes.
reinvented insurance. We did not reinvent healthcare.
Yes.
So we need to
Yes.
really rethink healthcare. And I call for, and I think other candidates
we
agree, dramatically expanding free, high-quality public health.
For
You just
everyone.
have to co-opt and go around the insurance companies because they're not doing what it is the American people want.
Yes.
Do you think that there should be a limit to the time that a woman or a young person would get an abortion, or you just feel like
I
that's...
think if there was more kindness and compassion and understanding, that would be a part of reducing the need for abortions. If communities supported women who are who are pregnant and having a child with more health care, with free child care, high quality child care, with early education, with support for their circumstances, with counseling and whatever coaching that they need, I just don't think that many women would choose to have abortions.
Dr. Kahn, what do you think the U.S. security stance in Asia should be?
Okay, so I go back to my doctrine of war and peace building in the 21st century.
Right.
I think that we need to look for every single opportunity to build peace. Windows open all the time, here at home, in cities all over the country, and in places all over the world. There's a window that opens where people kind of pause the conflict and violence and say, okay, maybe. The second point is that I think we do have to maintain strength in our military. I want the strongest military in the world. The third point is you can't building peace doesn't mean being stupid. So, China's got 40 nuclear missiles aimed at us. You can't go into denial about that. In addition, which it is the culture in Asia to think long term.
Right.
So they're like thinking things out like around air. I spent 22 years in aviation. Chinese are thinking about how to control space, about populating and developing industry on the moon and on other planets. I mean, we don't think that far out. We
Yes.
better start thinking
Yes.
far out. We better have a realistic approach to what's going on in Asia. We better understand when windows open that we need to be in there with ways to partner while still being realistic. Why are those 40 nuclear weapons aimed at California?
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Definitely. There's the mindset that has existed from the beginning of Western civilization. There's a doctrine called Doctrine of Discovery. This is where European monarchs, all 15 tribes, got together and agreed over 526 years ago that if they bumped into each other while discovering the world that existed, they would not fight each other. So that level of self-centeredness from those European tribes has dictated the failures in the world. We must revert and end that doctrine of discovery. It's the basis of manifest destiny, white privilege, and white supremacy, though less than 3% of the world population are producing Europeans.
Susan, do you think the U.S. has a role to play in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Yes. Stop funding Israel. Simple as that. If the U.S. wasn't funding and supporting Israel and being an honest broker in that part of the world, Israel would not stand as it is. With the Green Party, we support boycott, divest, and sanction. Our party has taken the lead on being involved for now almost 30 decades. It is critically important that Israel realize they must do a one-state solution. We got to get along. We got to get along.
Dr. Kahn?
I would add to that. I agree with most of what Sunam said. I think we have a very important role to play building peace in that area. I was appalled when the Prime Minister of Israel came here, and just to me it was like the drumbeat for war, and then so many of our politicians stood up and you could hear the drumbeat for war, the drumbeat for war. And I think that it's time to stop drone attacks. I think it's time to start looking at all the different ways in which we fund war.
Yes,
I
abroad.
think it's time to look at all the different ways in which big business, defense companies, arms
Yes,
companies
yes.
make profits from war.
Millions and billions.
That happens because politicians are bought and paid for by these big companies.
All right, let's take some questions from our viewers. This is from Kathleen Cook. Do you believe ISIS is a direct threat to the United States? Who would like to take that?
I'll go.
Okay, Dr. Kahn?
I think it's a threat more in the Mideast than it is here. We do have some pretty big oceans between us. I think it'd be absolutely naive to think that they're not trying to hurt us and, find dirty bombs and bring them here, among other things. Is it a direct threat? Not yet. I think that it is a threat in terms of the damage and violence that's happening, and that, again, it goes back to what we were saying before. If we're not wiser about the decisions that we're making, we're just going to increase that violence. We need to be wiser in those decisions, whether that means working with partners to control that situation or looking at alternatives, for example, for the Syrian civil war. We just need to make smarter decisions and not spend our money to make war over and over and over again.
I'd have to say three things. One is that we have to deconstruct really what ISIS is. It's a concept based on a historical view of what our nation has created. So when we are honest about that concept of ISIS, because it's not one place, so you can't find an ethereal enemy. So it's the concept we must deconstruct and own up to how we help create that, fund it, finance it, and call a summit. Okay, ISIS, what y'all really want? Find out exactly what their role is. If it's to destroy America, we're destroyed. You've done that. 2, just facilitate figuring out what it is their real aim and goal is, because I'm sure we've already achieved whatever it is on our own. And then 2, the mayhem that they're causing for their own selves within their own environment, people don't support it. There are moderate Islamic people who are against ISIS. We must build coalition and support people who support ending violence. Green Party, we're nonviolent. So we would usher in helping facilitate and understanding what created this concept, who funded it, and take responsibility and move us forward.
Now for our next question is from Stephen Dunn. What would you do about the conflict between Russia and Ukraine? Who wants to take that?
So I had this thought about maybe Donald Trump would be a good ambassador to Russia. Let him take on Putin. I actually, and I've met with and talked with intelligence experts who really have studied Russia and Putin for a long time, and he's a bully. He's a bully.
Yes.
You know, you can't negotiate with a bully either. You have to be strong. You have to stand up. So then I remember as a single mom teaching my son in kindergarten, you know, when next time that bully goes after you, grab him by the collar, you push him up against the wall, and you growl in his face. And we practiced growling like a lion when he was 5. I mean, he's a bully. So I think we need to be strong, we need to show strength there, and we need to look at all the ways in which we can have dialogue with him, that people that can have that kind of negotiation, that can stand up for him. And push it, solve the problem, but recognize
that they're psychopaths.
Okay, that's all we have time for. We'd like to thank Agape Sudaman Kanamo Christian Moyowasifza-Curry of the Green Party and independent candidate Dr. Lynn S. Kahn for joining us on the show. And thank you for watching the Presidential Debate Series. I'm Amy Treat, and we'll see you next time.